the title of the session is Commodization of medical devices. So I think in Polish, what sounds better is promotion of medical devices. Michał Kępowicz, Director for External Relations at Philips Health System Poland and Baltics, will be moderating this session. I hope you can hear and see me. Okay, so we can get on with the session. I would like to talk today about promotion of medical devices, because are they commoditized or not? We can argue about that, but I would like to thank everyone who's interested in this topic, who is watching us and will be asking questions later. My name is Michał Kępowicz, and today I represent the Polish Chamber of Medical Device Manufacturers and Philips Health Systems Poland. And I would like to greet people who will be our panelists. Together we will be discussing this trend. I would like to greet Ms. Anna Potrzebowska of the Ministry of Health, Magdalena Władysiuk, from an organization which has a longer name, perhaps I memorize it, Central and Eastern Europe Society of Technology Assessment in Healthcare, Łukasz Kołtowski of the Medical University of Warsaw, and Jakub Kraszewski of the University Clinical Center in Gdańsk. So thank you very much for having this opportunity to come together. I'll have a very brief introductory presentation, which will be followed by Magdalena Władysiuk's overview of medical services from the perspective of HTA, and later we have half an hour for a brief discussion, Q&A. I'm sure you will be keen to ask questions later. You can have a brief presentations, and later we will shortly recap. So let's proceed with my presentation. Hopefully you can see it on the screen. A couple of words about commoditization. Like we've said a minute ago, commoditization is promotion or propagation of a given product or services which comes from other sectors or industries, and products which were previously available to experts, to specialists, or people who are well-heeled, suddenly become available for ordinary consumers. I'll try to illustrate it with cell phones or mobile phones and smartphones, because Martin Cooper, one of the creators of Motorola's success, patented a solution that was very expensive, very complex, available for the few, and several decades later, anyone is able to buy a smartphone. So this product has gained foothold and is available to the public at large. The same happens to medical products, which were previously used in surgery in hospitals. This relates to consumerization or reorientation of products and services from the end users, which used to be an organization, and now the end user is an individual consumer. So there are many different medicinal products. I'm not calling them devices, because medical devices need to have a certificate. They have to meet certain standards. For example, there are some smartphone apps or smartphone functionalities that analyze what we do, our activity, physical activity, and many of those devices are now widely available. And they are useful to a certain degree in monitoring our health. And there are also many new devices and systems which were barely known not a long time ago, and we didn't know that we can use them to match our individual needs. For example, in the wake of COVID, people suddenly started buying oxygen machines. So right now, many people are buying oxygen machines just in case if anything happens, if their health deteriorates. Pulse oximeter, that's another device which is gaining foothold in private households. On the right, we have very interesting examples of medicinal products which are available even in Poland. On the top, we can see a special headband that stimulates or manages brain waves. It was designed in collaboration with NASA, but it's a consumer product, nowadays. A mobile ultrasound that you can use anytime and anywhere, even in the field. You simply connect it to the tablet or to your smartphone, and you can take it anywhere, practically anywhere. And diagnostics is reliable. So literally anytime and anywhere. Why do we need it, and who is taking interest in those devices? Well, there is huge interest. It is growing, especially in younger age groups. So millennials or the Z generation is very keen to use at-home diagnostics, and seniors and baby boomers are not shying away from it, perhaps on a smaller scale, but they are using it. Well, younger people, the take-up is much higher, but it's not bad in older age groups. Well, what does the market say? The wearables market. The wearables market is changing rapidly. Their sales is going from 10 billion euros to 100 billion euros. And as you can see on the bottom, on the pie chart, well, these are not sports and fitness wearables, but health wearables that are gaining momentum. Well, the success of commoditized medicinal products, will it see it in healthcare sector? Will it drive improvement in diagnostics, in treatment, in monitoring or rehabilitation? Well, this depends on a variety of factors, such as regulations, type of care. Will it be environmental care, hospital care, or value-based care? It depends which type will become popular in Poland. So there are several questions to panelists. I'll probably start asking them after the short lecture of Magdalena Walisiuk. So Magdalena, the floor is yours. Can I have my presentation? Well, the organizers will put it up in a minute. Well, by the way, thank you very much, Artur, for inviting me. It's my first time at eHealth Forum, and together with my husband, who's a cloud fan, and he said, okay, very exciting things I can't miss. anything. So I represent Healthcare Consulting, a company which puts together reports on different areas of healthcare. I wanted to show you an overview of developments in Poland. Why commoditization of medicinal devices in public healthcare? Obviously, the private sector is always growing more dynamically. In Poland, we see a vast cleavage between, a vast gulf between what patients would like to have and what we can give them in real life. As you know, very well, division of medicinal products is standard in all registration authorities, and therefore, historically speaking, when we talk about registration or assessment of medicinal products, there are two procedures in place. The first procedure, product registration, which is separate from drug registration procedure, and it's very important, and it has major impact on further reimbursement in public healthcare. Many authorities worldwide have reinforced these processes or initiated collaboration with health technology assessment institutions to speed up assessment. This is the case in Germany. Back in 2019, Germany introduced new acts that supported swift digitization of its healthcare system, and they also wanted to introduce new technologies. During the previous session, I've heard a very interesting sentence that you need to have system architect. mHealth, or all aspects related to collating patient data directly from them to monitor their status, is tied to another trend seldom seen in Poland. Well, seeing the patient as an equal partner in empowerment, patient empowerment. Because we have new tools in place, such as smartphones, and because we see development of the entire digital health area that includes AI, it's a very complex terrain and barely known, and this poses challenges for registration agencies. For example, when FDA is miles away from Europe. But in countries like the UK or Germany, where revolutionary changes, a quantum leap is made in healthcare, all changes are tied to the culture of designing healthcare systems. I'll try to illustrate it with a very simplified example. But what provokes anxiety and stimulates anxiety? I know that the previous session tackled the question, how can we provide wide access to simple products? For example, implantable devices such as chips that are transmitting signals. We need to decide what should be available within the system. So we need to take a strategic approach to introduction of new technologies. Of course, the biggest controversies are related to AI. But there are also questions concerning decision-making process supported by AI, because regrettably, initial experience in diagnostics and customized oncology is not very positive. I know that it will change. It's just a matter of time. So this breeds a question which we ask whenever we assess medical technology: to what extent this technology is able to improve the system compared to other medicinal products. Because we are not only improving results, we can improve operations of the system, work organization, utilization of resources, communication. So we start seeing benefits on different levels, on the patient level, on the service provider level, and on the level of the entire system, on the central level. And this requires a holistic approach of the architect, of the decision maker. What do we want to achieve in healthcare? This question was very swiftly regulated in Germany, which introduced a clear split of responsibility. And they also defined what are additional deliverables of the system. So deliverables are assessed as improvement of efficiency without changes in results, in clinical results. So safety is very important, not only in terms of data privacy, but also alignment of monitoring to rules in force. And something else that is missing very often today: we are assessing implementation of new technologies. So not only the app, but the entire environment will impact operations of some applications. Reimbursement. Latest technologies are reimbursed, even though they are very pricey, and we are applying for more money. For example, in Germany, you can get a receipt, you can read DG pages or NHS web pages on apps, on applications covered by prescriptions. And so if I were to sum up, what issues are we facing? So we don't have the right legal framework. We don't have clear-cut division of responsibilities. We don't have paths. For example, mHealth should be introduced together with registration to put new technologies on the fast tracks. Why? Because they are developing very fast. An assessment that lasts a year is unrealistic system-wise and user-wise, and especially in the context of development of future technologies. So we are looking for swift assessment that lasts no more than 3 weeks, and such solutions have been introduced worldwide. Adaptive pathway. I went through reference materials. There are separate units for health apps that assess in very short time, including satisfaction of clinicists and patients. So this is not only research focused on results, but also results and organizational dependencies. On the other hand, we have complex solutions which will not be apps in their own right. They will be combined products, for example, applied in hospital.
And in such cases, other solutions were developed in order to speed up access to new technologies. Well, there, assessment is made on the solutions. However, pilots are allowed when there are some doubts, and it makes it possible to gather information, not just on the results, but also on organizational aspects. In Poland, we started doing so, but implementation of the systems takes 3 to 4 years, and there we already lose the advantage of these solutions being innovative. And secondly, we lack proper legislative framework. It has only changed slightly since 2009. There were some amendments introduced in 2017, but we still have the old reimbursement law in force, and the technologies are prepared with this outdated legislative framework in mind. So when it comes to the entry into the system, this is the bottleneck. This is why hospitals and service providers have to organize themselves. Teleconsultations started because of COVID pandemic. The question is, will this solution last, and will it be translated into legislative framework? So we need such solutions, and we need more flexible approach towards funding such solutions, and this is another roadblock for decisions of service providers. Thank you very much. Thank you. I've been thinking that after such a presentation, we should ask the Ministry of Health to respond. However, before we do that, and even though regulatory framework is very important, there are other issues that are just as important. I'm not saying that this is the Ministry of Health. Well, but when we speak about the system architect, well, someone should look after this from a regulatory point of view. Well, I believe Arthur wanted to say something. We have the potential architect of the system, Department of Innovation of the Ministry of Health, maybe in cooperation with another authority. Then we have clinicists represented by Jakub, and then the scientific community, Łukasz and HCA. So, Jakub, is this something that has been noticed by clinicists? Can this be done in cooperation with your institution? Do you see any opportunities for commoditization? And we could always say, well, it's early, the system is not mature enough. We are still having to deal with basic problems. Well, no. During your presentation, I used two devices. And I'm not promoting any particular brand. I'm just saying that I am recovering from COVID-19, and I am using a pulse oximeter to take the oxygen saturation, and one of these devices has got all the standards CE approved and so on and so forth, and the other one is a mobile phone, and the mobile phones have a similar measurement, and they call it the stress test level, and I used both devices, and the result was virtually the same. So there was not much deviation here. So technology develops at a very fast pace, whether we like it or not. So some things that used to be limited to hospitals or outpatient clinics are possible elsewhere in terms of measurements, tests, and diagnostics. The first presentation that you gave showing different devices and possibilities. The ECG electrocardiogram can be performed at home with a mobile device. There are some devices which make it possible for the patient to be more autonomous, and patients are no longer required to make unnecessary trips to surgeries or clinics. For example, let's imagine someone wanting to check his or her blood oxygen saturation. Would that person need to go to hospital? Well, that would be very risky, wouldn't it? That's right. So you said that certain developments are inducing a faster pace of development, and with COVID pandemic, we were forced to do something that we should have done a long time ago. Teleconsultations, for example. If you have all the information about the patient in the system, if you have all the test results, it should be no problem to speak to the patient on the phone or during a video call and to reissue a prescription. It should be no problem at all. And probably after COVID pandemic, we will not revert back to face-to-face visits only, because this is a waste of resources. Why would a 90-year-old patient have to make a trip every time he or she needs a prescription refilled if there are no new problems, other problems, additional circumstances that would require a personal visit? This should be unnecessary. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had an experience. My son, who is a teenager, had a rash. And we filmed a video. We took photographs. We sent it to a doctor. Doctor said, well, this is this, and made a diagnosis. So how about standards, and how about legal requirements and legal framework? This doctor didn't have a legal framework. She took a risk making a diagnosis based on a video made with the use of mobile phone. However, there is a question whether this technology is not sufficient to be used in a more general way. At hospitals, for example, we want to minimize the length of hospital stay per patient. And some people may say that this is crazy, as everyone is doing things differently. But we say that this hospital at home principle is something that we should pursue. The financial resources are always scarce. We never have enough money. And if we want to put someone on a hospital bed, if it is not absolutely necessary, this is absurd. If we just want to take
wyposażyć tego pacjenta w ten system.
And of course, we can also do monitoring of this patient, and the patient can stay at home, and probably this person would have better care at home, better mental support than the mental support and care he or she would receive at a hospital. So I know it is not always possible, and we have to be very careful who needs to be put in a hospital and who can be treated at home. And I remember when I did my MBA course, I had a lecture with someone who was wearing a helmet, which has now become a headband. And this wearable device at that time had over 600 points of stimulation, and it was a very big wow. It was considered a rocket science development. And now you buy this band together with an application for your smartphone. So times have changed, ladies and gentlemen, and this device, which works in a reverse manner, is used for gaming, although it is not really legal in Poland, is it? So to give others an opportunity to speak, I would like to thank you very much. So hospital to home, that's the solution that you would like to propose. Instead of having patients occupy hospital beds, we could have patients being treated while staying at home. I know you wanted to make a comment. Well, yes, just one more thing. Well, this technology use is similar to use of any other things. Technologies, of course, speed the communication up, it helps us, but it does not resolve all the problems. Sometimes we need face-to-face minutes. So self-management, home management, this is something that was done 20 years ago, and in Nordic countries 30 years ago. So we are making a big fuss about it. and certain things that can be implemented quite fast are not necessarily better. Something may be more efficient, but may offer worse results or worse outcomes. So we need to understand that it depends on how it is used, over what period, how regularly, how educated patients are. And if you look at German programs, what is being verified includes the level of patient awareness, the ability to use the mobile devices, because we have to be careful here. You know, there are systems which have the dangers, the problems which are an integral part of the system. So, for example, when you have the inpatient solutions, there is always a risk of hospital infection. But for other solutions, there are other risks that are embedded into the system. We have some problems with face-to-face communication, and there'd be even more problem with remote communication. Yes, I know there are some advantages, and there are also some concerns. I'm skeptical myself, but when we have this session, and health literacy or health numeracy is important. In order to manage our own health, we need to be literate, basically, when it comes to mobile devices and solutions that we are expected to use. And we are working on a platform that will make it possible for us to promote such solutions and to discuss them more extensively. We need to build awareness, not only amongst patients or users. Sometimes patients or users are more aware of the possibilities than the participants or other participants of the system. So we have to be very careful to be neither overly skeptical nor overly optimistic or enthusiastic. So what is your opinion? You represent the ministry, the regulator. Yes, I have been the enthusiast of e-health for over 10 years now, and sometimes I wonder why are things progressing so slowly, because we seem to be working on solutions that will be serving our grandchildren, it seems. We worked on so many different things, the Baltic Declaration, the e-prescription, but then the COVID came and things were speeded up because of it. Using remote technology to monitor patients is very popular for scientific research. I also prepared a mobile spirometer for patients suffering from COPD. And it's so much easier now to diagnose COPD for patients. And we have 3 million such patients in Poland. And we have a risk of cross-contamination. We cannot do spirometry at the hospital. So we send the spirometer to patients' homes, then they are returned, disinfected, and then they are offered to patients. When we speak to pulmonologists with Polish Society of Lung Disease, we hear that, well, there is no reimbursement. We'd be more than happy to use this solution, but who is going to pay? The only reimbursed solution is for the patient to come to the surgery, for the staff to get all dressed up in protective gear. This costs 200 zlotys per patient, and this is how this is being done, because otherwise it cannot be reimbursed. So for me, it is a no-brainer. Structured and digital solutions are a great potential, and they also have a great research potential. We can build new knowledge, new experience, new skills. This is very important, and I keep appealing to everyone to engage the realm of academia, because we want to use all of this for the research purpose.
So very briefly, and when we have COPD patients where spirometry, say alongside clinical symptoms and invasive mechanical ventilation, because we've been collating data for the past 3 days. We have at-home ventilation. You don't need the hospital to do that. The hospital should be the place where the worst and most severe cases are referred to, but you need to take a systemic approach, because everyone has a different vision, and as a result, the system is very fragmented. So it shouldn't make a difference where I live. I should have the same access to medical services like everyone else. But before you end up at the hospital, you should be flagged in the system, and during briefing, I should be discussing all individual cases and decide who will be admitted to the hospital and who will not be admitted. Well, yes, when we talk about ventilation at home, solutions are in place, but it's a mixed bag. We are doing everything halfway. Everyone is an enthusiast, wants to improve, and we are improvising. Okay, I'm not going to criticize the Ministry of Health, because I know it's no easy task. Everyone is arguing, do something, and you have a million of things, and everything has to be done at once. So I do realize it's a daunting exercise. Perhaps system architect, but should it be the Ministry of Health? I love the name, the Department for Innovation. I didn't change livery, but I opted for establishment of the Department for Innovation, because innovation should be the drivetrain of modern economy. If a country wants to develop, wants to grow, innovation is the way forward. And if we are not innovative, if other countries are innovative and we are just buying innovation, there are no foundations of the national economy. So the question is to Anya about system architect. Would this department be the place to create the brand new reality, this brave new world? Because good management, sound management, a strategic vision of tying all those elements together. Because if you are planning week by week, you don't take a uniform approach to it. You're not going to create a final system which may not be economically viable, for example. So a number of questions. Anna Potrzebowska, Department for Innovation. We are a brand new unit at the Ministry of Health, which was recently appointed. And from my perspective, if I may, how we are going to look at it. The ministry is keeping an eye on development of the new technologies market in Poland and overseas, and we notice that patients themselves expect certain changes and they look forward to new technologies because, for example, electronic banking or online shopping, is very normal. So the healthcare sector will be another stage. And we have very high expectations from this. Well, the pandemic has showed us that e-health is the key element of the healthcare sector. And we have introduced electronic prescriptions. In times of pandemic, teleconsultations had to be implemented because of developments across the country. And from my side, I can assure you that we are currently discussing introduction of new technologies in different areas of medicine. There will be pilot implementations. And if there are reliable solutions implemented abroad, we will be also doing our best to have them implemented in Poland. Of course, you have rightly mentioned that we need to amend our regulations and to change the range of guaranteed medical services. You have mentioned pulse oximeter. For patients who are isolating at home, for patients diagnosed with COVID, we provide them with at-home healthcare. That includes the use of pulse oximeter tied to PulseCare app, because we are monitoring vital parameters in those patients. There is a special contact center which was established especially for this purpose by the Ministry of Health. And when parameters are deteriorating, the consultant from the contact center gets in touch with the customer. And when the parameters are going down, it doesn't necessarily mean that the patient is feeling worse or something bad is happening to the patient. It may be a mistake. The readout may be faulty. So if the patient is really in serious condition, there is teleconsultation or perhaps ambulance arrives at his or her household. So stage one of preparations for embracing innovative medicinal products in healthcare has been completed. Of course, we will continue to monitor it and identify where and in which areas those modern technologies and innovative medical devices can be implemented shortly. Of course, they must be safe for the patient, and on the other hand, they need to boost the efficiency of medical professionals. So we have a long way to go, but we are doing our best to initiate collaboration with the National Health Fund to have those modern technologies implemented. And as a result, because on P1 platform we have so much data, so many records and information about patients, we can also harness them and use AI to support patients' decision-making. Next year, we will be launching online patient account, a mobile app, and we will also want to support physicians and patients in preventive measures, because they can use their smartphones or wristbands or smartwatches to monitor different functions, and legislation has to catch up. We do realize that amendments are required, and so is the range of guaranteed medical services. So thank you very much for your voices. They are all relevant, they are all important. But we want those changes to be evolutionary, not revolutionary, because we don't want to hurt medical professionals. And we will definitely consulting those decisions with you. Well, thank you very much. Well, Łukasz has said something interesting, and I'm going to ask a question in a minute, so I'll give you time to think it over. The key thing we should be doing now to make this commoditization meaningful. But because time is running out, Łukasz has said data warehouse and collating data, even physiological data, just to know, it's awesome. I think, because as a result, we can support micromanagement. We can support testing the efficacy of different molecules or medical benefits. You know, for example, this can become our regional specialty in Eastern Europe to create a data net, collate data from all those wearable devices, from all at-home devices. Okay, Jakub, the Medical University of Gdańsk, one suggestion, one recommendation from you. Well, what is important for the medical team is the patient. So 50% of efficacy of any therapy, let it be standard or remote, depends on the patient's attitude. If the patient is not taking medication, the therapy is not going to be effective. So you need to convince the patient that these tools are actually helpful. So convince the patient, okay. Magdalena. Well, to be frank, it's an extremely difficult question. I think, yes, educate the patient and get them convinced. And it doesn't matter which product, whether it's an app or not, it should be smart. We should communicate to the patient what they can do, what they can't do, like with drugs. You know, patients who are buying oxygen concentrators themselves, I'm afraid this is no fun. You know, it's serious business. So let's use them, but let's think, okay? So education plus our support, someone within the system, you know, it's easy to buy equipment, but you need to be able to do something with your diagnosis. So we need to build a bridge between what clinicists want and what patients expect. So patient, that's the element that needs to be integrated within the community. On the central level, service providers. Łukasz. I would like to see improvement on the financial level. In the US, every physician is able to prescribe one monitoring device for the patient, and the system pays for it. It's up to the medical professional to choose the device. No one is micromanaging and checking what is it. So, you know, I want medical professionals to select those tools. I think the German system is better, you know, not a single piece of equipment, but whatever the patient needs. But it's some equipment that is cheap. You know, commodization, you know, the more we sell, the cheaper it gets. So 2,000 patients. Sorry, there is no voice. Okay, so Kuba went mute. The Ministry of Health. Well, I definitely agree with you. We are patient-centric, but we also have to remember about the service provider and medical professionals who are prescribing treatment. Plus, there are legislative issues, you know, dealt with by the Ministry of Health. Okay, I'm going to take it down because we'll put together recommendations, perhaps even today. They will be discussed while recapping this conference. And we, as Polmed, will be creating Polmed Digital to educate, build awareness, because it's incredibly important. The patient or the consumer needs to know that some solutions are essential, solutions that are good in large doses, including digitization, may do a lot of harm. Okay, so great. We are 1 minute after time. It was a great discussion. Thank you very much. I'll take everything down, and hello again, and thank you. I would like to greet our audience today. Hope you found it interesting. Thank you.
Dziękujemy, Michale.
Dziękuję.
Bardzo dziękujemy.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting discussion. It was a pleasure to listen to you, and it is always more interesting if people disagree, if they discuss things, and this is the opportunity for us to work out new solutions. And thank you for keeping up with the pace of this conference. And when we spoke about the measurement of oxygen saturation done using smartphone, I did this stress level test myself. Seems I will leave, and my stress seems to be lowest for 2 weeks. And I have some doubts whether these measurements are credible or not. Should we measure your stress level? Why not? Well, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting panel because medical devices are closer and closer to patients, and they are here to stay, and they will influence the way we perceive our health and the way we manage our health, the way we manage health risk. So thank you very much. I count on your summary during the last session of this conference. It's very important because we want our conclusions to be complete.